إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. أما بعد, to proceed, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah. People say auspicious. I feel like it's kind of a big word, auspicious. But it is an auspicious occasion that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would just give us another Jumu'ah, give us another opportunity, inshallah, to obey him through a day that the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that there hasn't been a day that the sun has risen over better than Yawmul Jumu'ah. That's just one, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala facilitated another Jumu'ah for us. And that two, that we would be in the wilderness of North America. And at three, that we would be in Detroit. And at four, alhamdulillah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make this the day, the February 21st anniversary, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought the same Malcolm who was a drug addict, the same Malcolm who was a robber, the same Malcolm who was a stick-up boy, the same Malcolm who, if there was a dark alley and he was in it, you might not want to walk down it. That same Malcolm, he drew him from those circumstances, and he took him to the pinnacle of our Islam and giving him shahada, inshallah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on his soul and continue to envelope his grave in light. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to see him, to see his face. What is it, inshallah? We make it to Jannah, we will see the face of our beloved Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But even your brother here, I got a little checklist after that. After we see the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, it's some faces that I want to see personally. High on that list, our beloved Wali, our beloved Saint, Malcolm X Al-Hajj Malik Al-Shabazz. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to envelope him in his light, inshallah. Just to be able to sit with him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to do that. Serve him even. Wash his feet. Whatever he need me to do, inshallah. If I make it in there, I'm down with doing. His life represents transformation, as we know. His life represents what happens when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stirs the heart and begins to draw people nearer to him. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that as his life represented sidq, having a true heart orientation towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like being true with Allah, not true with the face that we put on for people, not true with the clothes that we put on for people, the language, they say code switching nowadays, the language that we put on for people, but being true with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in every state that we can possibly be. One of the you could say the special characteristics of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was that any virtuous character that you could think of, sidq, bravery, all these sorts of things, he represents, again, the pinnacle of that. His Sahaba, stay with me, represent in many times the pinnacles of that you can have in somebody after him that will follow him. And if somebody is very special to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right, we know that they might resemble Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu in their dealings. We know they might resemble Khadija radiallahu anha in their dealings, in their character. But if somebody is really special amongst those who said La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in these times, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's the Jami. He will gather characteristics of Sahaba in one person. And Malcolm, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on him, he'll gather it in him. He has what? The adl, right? The justice of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, right? He has the seeking of truth as Salman al-Farisi radiallahu anhu. Understand? He has the understanding of human behavior as Aisha radiallahu anha. And we can go on and on. And he has the call, this da'wah. How many people? I can't even literally stand here right now without his da'wah reaching my parents. There's no me talking in front of this mic. There's no many of the masajid here. There's no us, having a place to go pray Maghrib at without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gathering the da'wah, the strength of da'wah and Malcolm X, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on him, and then disseminating from him in his life and life story so that it reached us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to have mercy on him. So the khutbah was about Ramadan. And then I thought to myself, how much of a criminal would I be had we not offered just prayers of forgiveness for the soul of Malcolm X, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on him, and had we not mentioned his name at the very least. We should mention his name so that it's mentioned, ad infinitum on the tongues of our children, on the tongues of people who come here, to understand that when one's life and death become for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, countless people therein benefit from it. How many millions of people are continuing to benefit from it? And that does not mean that Malcolm X and Ramadan are diametrically opposed. These are not clashing forces. They're one and the same. One and the same. I don't know Ramadan without him, inshallah. So we get into, inshallah, Ramadan a bit. Knowing what? That we would not have this affair of Ramadan, at least in my family, without his life, his body being departed from his soul, inshallah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, on the tongue of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, after those who are admitted into Jannah, right? So we already made it through the door. Inshallah, Allah gather the faces that are here, these beautiful faces that are here, through the door of Jannah, inshallah. We've already made it through the door. We're already enjoying the accommodations of Jannah, right? People look up hotels, they look up resorts, and they want to see, do they got jacuzzis, do they got pool, all these sorts of things. What type of breakfast they having in the morning, what's provided, what's around. They look up all the accommodations. We are all enjoying the accommodations of Jannah and everything that's blessed therein. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He calls out to the inhabitants of Jannah, they having a good time. Inshallah, we're going to be having a good time. Good old time. And Allah says to them, are you pleased with what you have? What a strange question to ask people who've made it through the door. It says, are you pleased with what you have? And the inhabitants of Jannah reply back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying, how can we not be pleased, Ya Allah? You've given us what you haven't given any of your creation. How could we not be pleased? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replies back to them in question, would you like more than that? Now here we say, I'm going to colloquial term free, we say, what on earth, right? What on earth could be this? What on earth could be that? There, inshallah, we'll be saying, what on Jannah? What on Jannah could be more than what we're experiencing right now. In Jannah, we'll have a level of kun, right? If we, a sheikh always say, you see a bird in the sky, you say, I want that bird barbecue, barbecue chicken, right? Hear the sheikh say a million times. We'll have those things, whatever we could imagine here that was mulk, that was dominion, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be facilitating it through us by just wanting it, right? You just want it, it happens. We're experiencing that, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He doubles down and He says, would you like something more? And the inhabitants of Jannah say, what could be more than that? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reply to the inhabitants of Jannah and say that you will forever have my pleasure. Forever have my pleasure. That thing we've been seeking this whole time, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He's pleased with me. And He says, as for my displeasure, I'll never be displeased with you ever again. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us amongst that group. Why is this so important? The Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, what was the main monument, you could say, of his appeal to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala after Ta'if, after losing his wife, after being banished from his own people, after walking out of Ta'if, feet bleeding, disrespected by imbeciles, making dua for the same people who disrespected him, in a horrid state? What was the monument of his dua? Of all the things that he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for, I can endure anything. I can endure anything, any day. But your displeasure, I can't spend a second with. So the very thing that was the main concern of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Allah in Jannah does away with it. And so we should ask ourselves, inshallah, have we made our religion? Have we made our connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala about his pleasure and displeasure? Or have we made it about the creation? And the topic is about moving creation to the side. Not in a disrespectful way, but in its proper place. Wisdom is being able to do what? Put things in their proper place. We keep Allah, Allah. We keep the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam as that. And we keep everything there and after in its proper place so that things are not in our heart in a place where they should not be. Ramadan, because of this, we all just mash together in just one mosh pit and just pray all night, worship all night, or what have you. Ramadan for some can be a huge test because everybody, hasn't been putting on in the usual dance that we do with a religion and spirituality and everything. There are people who may be distant. And while Ramadan comes, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala understand, when he starts to stir the heart, when Ramadan comes around, people start to say, I got to get back into this thing. I really got to get back going. But there's a barrier that comes. They start to think about, what are people going to perceive of me when I walk through those doors? And so we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that when those thoughts come to the heart of each and every one of us, because people try to say, I don't care about nobody pain. We spend a lot of time in front of a mirror, don't we? We fixing us with sisters 3 hours in the bathroom, right? Event is over, right? Because folks been doing the bathroom, right? Brothers, make sure the Nikes is like super clean, get a toothbrush, bleach, all that, right? Make sure the shoestring. We do a whole lot. If it was just for us, man, we just be busting out the door doing whatever we got to do. But we put on, and then we lose Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the process. And so we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he engender, right, a love in our heart for just his pleasure. And that in turn, right, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins to bestow this love upon us. Now we just had, right, just last week, quote unquote, National Day of Love, right? With the Fortune 500 companies and the capitalist entities that run this country, they bank on people being challenged to express their love and affection for their counterparts, their spouses, or what have you, right? What they say, every kiss begins with K, all these sort of slogans that they run down our throat, right? And so we may be caught up in thinking, how can I express my love? Like, what's the thing? I did this last year. What can I, right? And I'm being real because there are people we participate in this, right? So this is not like, if we're going to talk about Malcolm on February 21st, we're going to make things very plain, inshallah. People who don't even participate in it feel a push to do it, right? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right, when we're talking about real love, not the love like your mom, because he created your mom, not the love like your father, because he created your father, not the love like your siblings, because he created all those things. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins to love, he loves a servant. What does he do? He begins just a little inkling, this stirring in the heart. You just think about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just a thought. You didn't even go into bodily actions yet. You just think about your affair with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَعَلَمَ أَنَّ اللَّهَ يَحُولُ بَيْنَ الْمَرْءِ وَقَلْبِهِ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says in the Quran, know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he intervenes between a person and their heart. So a person could be thinking, I want to do the most wretched thing on earth. They could be prepared to do it. And like a movie we won't mention, right? They get out of the car, right? Let me out. And so I'm going to go do something else. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala plants that thought into that person's heart. And they begin to take a course towards him. And those, as we said about Malcolm X, they were completely on the other side of the spectrum of being near Allah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he arrests them by first what? A heart stirring. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then he conveys an ability. We talk about tawfiq. What is tawfiq? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creating in the servant the ability to serve him, to obey him. What does that mean? Someone who felt like Tuesday, I didn't want to make any prayers. I went to sleep and somehow I was just stirred to wake up and pray Fajr. I was just stirred to wake up and pray Dhuhr. And we find many people like that, many people among us. They had every reason. They were on every route towards having a bad affair at the end. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of no traumatic doing anything like that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then changes that person's entire heart situation. And now we find them, they can't stop talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They can't stop remembering the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Thirdly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even when we err, even when we have errors, as the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, Kulli bani Adam khata wa khayru khata'in at-tawabin. He says, all of the children of Adam, they err. We're going to mess up. If you're waiting on a human to not break your heart and not, go left, you're going to be in trouble, champ. If you're waiting for that, you're going to be in trouble. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows this about Bani Adam. He knows our affair with our own selves. That left to our own devices, we're going to do something left. We're going to do something left. But the best of those who go off course are those who constantly get on right back onto the exit to Allah. Like when you miss your exit, you get off the exit, and you find your exit right back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As we are told, if you're going to be a repeat sinner, be a repeat repenter. If you're going to be a repeat offender, right? Be a person who constantly is making istighfar. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, thirdly, when he loves a person, when we say love somebody, this is somebody who is in the abyss of their own sin. They can't see a way out. They can't comprehend a next day in which they are not harming themselves and their souls. Right? Like tomorrow, I'm going to do X, Y, Z bad. Right? Some of us been in this state where you actually got the bad planned out. Like you got the whole thing orchestrated. I'm going to cut up tomorrow. It's going to go like this. We're going to go here. Right? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that same heart stirring, what does he do? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reaches in that person's heart and then he breaks it. And then that person ends up sorrowful. And that person ends up regretful. And they end up thinking that, what? The sky is falling on me. Dunya begins to constrict them. Everything that they thought they knew, right, begins to escape them. And in that broken state, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins to draw them forth. Step after step after step. And then finally, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when it's all said and done, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as he said to those, right, would you like something more than what you've been experiencing right here in Jannah? And that is my pleasure. And that is completely being divorced from my displeasure. So as Ramadan approaches, inshallah, our hope is, inshallah, that we get ourselves fixed up. We get our heart fixed up. That if we're thinking about Ramadan, that means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is doing some love on us. If we're thinking about fasting, that means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right, is loving up on us. Be very honest with you. I was sitting, I was somewhere, and I heard a sister say, I'm the only one in my family that don't fast, and I could tell that when she said this expression, there was a little twinge of whoever she was talking to, like, please push me, just love up on me just a little bit. And she said, yeah, haha. She says, I feel like it's inconvenience to myself, right? And so some of us, we might hear something like that and be like, just lie. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he gathers people who are so far every day in that way. And so as Ramadan comes up, our compass is going to start to be shifted, right? How do you fix the compass? You get a magnet to set it straight. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this sort of dhikr Allah, this sort of remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is what we need to first be engaged in. Asking istighfar, forgiveness from Allah is the first thing we need to be engaged in. Because what? We've been cutting up all year since the last Ramadan. For some of us, hasn't been a Ramadan in the last 5 years. And so we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by hook or crook, by whatever way possible that he can get us through the door, that he gets us through the door. And while we're going through that door, When we come upon faces that maybe in our own head they're judging us, maybe in our own head they're perceiving this as something low, that we are able to see past it, right? We can make the situation opaque. We look straight through Allah's creation, not disrespectfully, and we get straight to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What does that mean? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes us mind our business. Makes us mind our business. The content of this is what? Our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Making this Ramadan about Allah. From the goodness of one Islam, right? Is a mar'u atarku ma la ya'nihi. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows someone's, like they want to perfect their Islam, that they worry about their own business. So your Ramadan is your Ramadan. You're not going to be able to go in their judgment and be like, okay, so Ahmed's Ramadan and Aisha's Ramadan, like how do these things measure up? No, it's going to be how you were with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how we were with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, without the sight of human beings. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to remove the sight of human beings from our heart. So 4 things. 1 is that we have sincerity with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sincerity with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What does that mean? We save some things for just us and Allah. Zayn al-Abidin radiyallahu anhu. It was not known that he was feeding people. It was not known that he was feeding people. Hundreds of people until he died. And people came to the masjid and were asking, like, where's this food that used to be put out for us every night? If not for someone who serves him, seeing the marks from the straps on his back, from carrying the food nightly, every night, they wouldn't know that Zayn al-Abidin radiallahu anhu was feeding them. So inshallah, we save something in Ramadan that's between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because we all come in here and everybody can see each other praying, right? We ask Allah to make our hearts sincere, but the point is everybody sees each other praying. So we save something between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We fall in love with the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Again, we say this over and over again. If you want to be a da'i, you want to really call towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, introduce them to the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and get out the way. Same thing for ourselves. Can we introduce ourselves to the noble character of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam again? Find our prescription in the Quran. Find our shifa, inshallah, in the Quran. You will find yourself amongst the Sahaba. More importantly, you'll find yourself in the Quran. Whatever we're struggling with, whatever we feel like we're having difficulty with, find our prescription from it in the Quran, inshallah. And then, inshallah, Allah allows us not to abandon it thereafter. And then lastly, the first point made, make a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and leave whatever we think about that people are thinking about us at the door. Whatever we think that people are thinking about us at the door, inshallah. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu reported that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not, that the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala la yanduru ila suwarikum, that he does not gaze at our forms. Allah yanduru ila qulubikum wa a'malikum, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he gazes at our hearts and he gazes at our actions. So one who is truly putting aside creation is worried about their heart and worried about their actions. They're worried about their heart, they're worried about their actions. Perhaps we've put people where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should be. Perhaps we've put the opinions of other people where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should be. Perhaps we've put money where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should be. Perhaps we've put our children where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should be. Perhaps we've put our relationships with the people that we love, our spouses, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should be. All of dunya is everything that distracts us from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How bankrupt, right? What type of state, what type of horrid state would somebody be in that they spent the entire Ramadan, we spent the entire Ramadan making sure we had it on the right face for Allah's creation and not worrying about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and our affair with him. This is the month of forgiveness. And this last tradition is about a man who came to the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in a stir, feeling that it was over for him. I spoke to a group of students earlier, and I said, I've been walking to many a khutbah as a young man, like a little kid, like a young man in the red right there, and been walking out, and like I knew for a fact, like I'm going to Jahannam. Like I'm going. Everything he said applies to me. I'm going to the hot place, right? And I needed at that time examples of mercy to, inshallah, maybe draw me back in. And so a man comes to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says, "I'm doomed. It's over. I'm damned." And so Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked him, like, "Well, what's your affair? What's going on?" He said, "I was with my wife. We supposed to be fasting. I was with my wife." So Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Can you free a slave? Can you manumit a slave? Can you free a slave?" "No, I can't free a slave. I ain't got a slave nowhere to give." Right? He says, "Can you fast for 60 days? What a question, Ya Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If I could have fasted, I wouldn't be in this situation in the first place. Right? If I could have, I like my wife. Right? Point blank clear. He really liked his wife. Right? I can't do that. Right? Fasting is hard on me. Right? He said, "Can you feed 60 poor people?" "I can't even feed 60 poor people." So Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he facilitates having like a whole bunch of dates to be given to him. He says, "Go feed people." MashaAllah, we got a resolution, right? He has the parcel of dates in his hand. He's going to leave. He says, "Ya Rasul, there's not anybody between the two mountains in Medina who was poorer than me. Like, we need food." What does the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what does he say? Like, how damned are you? How bankrupt you are? All the things that we say nowadays, so when we see somebody might in a troubled state with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How judgmental, he become judgmental. No. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam lets off the biggest smile known to man. Known to man. He says, "Go feed your family, man." And so we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, why don't we make Ramadan for us? That inshallah, we encounter those who may be perceived as struggling, because it's all outward. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows our hearts, right? Sincerity is the secret, so hidden from creation that even angels can't write our sincerity. That inshallah, we give them some pardon as well, and we make things a comfortable landing plate for them. And that inshallah, this time that's about to come up, Allahumma balighna Ramadan, Allahumma balighna Ramadan, Allahumma balighna Ramadan. Allah give us Ramadan. That inshallah this Ramadan is truly for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That doesn't mean you don't serve people. That means you serve people for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It doesn't mean you don't give to your family and friends. You give people for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That doesn't mean that you don't work on your relationships with others. It means you do it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And those things that are done for His sake will meet us in the akhirah. Those things that are truly done for His sake will meet us in the akhirah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد كما صليت على ابراهيم وعلى ابراهيم انك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى محمد كما باركت على ابراهيم وعلى ابراهيم انك حميد مجيد. يا ايها الذين امنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن الا وانتم مسلمون. ان الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا ايها الذين امنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. ربنا اتنا في الدنيا حسنه وفي الاخره حسنه وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا اللهم اغفر لنا ولوالدينا. الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا يوافي نعمه وكافي مزيدا. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد نورك الساري ومالك الجاري واجمعني بكل اتبار وعلى اله وصحبه يا نور. إني أوصيكم وإياي بتقوى الله إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم اغفر للمسلمين والمسلمات. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا وأخطأنا. ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا. ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allahumma balighna Ramadan, allow us to reach Ramadan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, allow us to reach Ramadan in sincerity. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, comfort and make spacious the grave of our Mawlana Malcolm X, Al-Hajj Al-Malik Al-Shabazz. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to bestow his favors upon his progeny. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not deter us from his way. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues to facilitate through his da'wah, through his life and his death, our benefit inshallah and the benefit of all humanity. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make through his lineage and his work, inshallah, this nation, the Muhammadan nation. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring back those who've gone on to Umrah and gone on to travel, inshallah, in good state, and bring nafahat al-Jannah, inshallah, to here, inshallah. And Allah ya'mur bil-adli wa ihsan wa ita'i dhil qurba wa yanha 'anil fahsha'i wal munkari wal baghi ya'idhukum la'allakum tadhakkarun wa dhikrullahi akbar wallahu ya'lamu ma taf'alun. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what we do. Okay,